It seems in all other human endeavors such as science, music, and art, there have been technical evolution over time. Has the same thing occurred in meditation techniques?
Yes, certainly. Meditation techniques have been modified all the time. The Buddha gives meditation instructions in the suttas, and they are quite clear, but the understanding of them varies widely. So many people are very sure about what the Buddha taught, and that they are those who follow that teaching, and another group claims just the same and practice very differently. So you can certainly assume that meditation techniques have been modified very much. That's
Yep. From a orthodox point of view, the orthodox, or I don't know what the word, the accepted explanation of this is that there are different types of people. Some people you don't even have to give them a teaching. You just tell them what sort of teaching you teach. So instead of the Satipatthana Sutta, instead of even teaching the Satipatthana Sutta, you'd say, there are these 4 Satipatthanas, these 4 foundations of mindfulness. And you might not even have to, the amazing thing is you might not even have to explain what are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And some people just get it, just like that. Like Sariputta, yang kinchi what was it? Ye dhamma hetu bhava te sang dhammang tathagata ahu. Those dhammas that arise based on a cause, the Buddha has taught the cause of those dhammas. And Sariputta realized Nibbana as a result of that. He became a Sotapanna, Upatissa, and Moggallana as well. These types of people are very rare. And the theory is that they were much more common in the Buddha's time, but still very rare in the Buddha's time. Another type of person you have to explain in detail. So you have to say, well, what do you mean by that? Right? Whatever dhammas arise based on a cause, the Buddha has taught the cause of those dhammas. Well, it means suffering. No, everything, all suffering has a cause. And the Buddha has taught the cause of suffering, which is craving. When there is craving, then there will be. So you explain the 4 Noble Truths, and maybe you have to explain in some detail. Like maybe you have to teach the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, like how Kondanya became a Sotapanna was by listening to the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So this type of person, just by when they're listening to the Dhamma, they can become enlightened as a result of it. Or Yassa is another example. Just listening to the Buddha's teaching once, he became a Sotapanna. Listening to the same teaching again, he became an Arahant. A third type of person has to be trained, not only given the detailed discourse, but has to be trained in it and has to be guided through it. This type of person, it's not enough to teach them even the Satipatthana Sutta, but then you have to say, okay, come and do a course in Satipatthana, and then guide them through it. Okay, then remember to be mindful. Remember to be mindful. Okay, now be mindful of this. Are you mindful of this? And keeping them on track and guiding them through it to be able to understand. Oh, this is the Satipatthana, and this is the truth, and this is what happens in the realizations. And a fourth type of person can't be trained, and no matter how much you help them and give to them, they don't gain anything out of it, or they can only just get the meaning of it, the meaning of the words. So because of that, the Tipitaka is not enough. The Tipitaka is enough. This is the Theravada opinion. No, the Tipitaka is not enough for everyone. You need some explanation of the Tipitaka. So it's not wrong that people are explaining it. The problem, of course, as Balanani said, is that 1, people explain it differently. 2, they cling to their explanation as being correct. And there is a standard explanation in the Theravada tradition, is called the commentaries. No, there's a huge commentary literature that has a very specific interpretation of the Buddhist teaching. Now, it doesn't say this is the only interpretation and any other interpretation is heretic and is wrong. In fact, it even talks about different interpretations, and it gives the opinion this interpretation is not correct because it's illogical or because it goes against this sutta, but it's still just an interpretation. The problem is when people say, the commentaries are just interpretation, throw them out, practice the Satipatthana Sutta in this way, this way, this way, and this way. It's very clear how the Buddha said. The Buddha said this, which means this, which means this. And hypocritically, what they do is create another commentary, while at the same time saying that commentary is just an interpretation and therefore shouldn't be followed. Unless you can become enlightened through listening and through understanding clearly the suttas, you're going to have to interpret them, and you're going to have to find a way to apply them. The Buddha said, "Gachanto va gachamiti bhajanati." When going, a monk knows I am going. So if you can understand that and become enlightened just listening to it, because you understand then that there's this hearing, this sound is also just sound, and you can apply the meditation while you're listening to it and become enlightened right there, then there's no need to practice it. But if you can't, then you have to figure out, okay, I guess that means I should do some going, and know that I'm going. And then you have to practice that, okay, going, or walking. And maybe you even have to go to the extent that it's not just walking anymore, but I have to do it 1 foot at a time, because otherwise I'm not really going to see things as they are. And the Buddha, you have all this Buddhist teaching and you realize the Buddha was actually talking about seeing the dhatus, the elements. So if I'm going to see the elements, I have to move 1 foot at a time. And wait a minute, even in one step, there's different elements arising. Lifting the foot doesn't feel the same as putting the foot down, so there's different experiences arising. So let's lift the foot first and then put it down. And then people come along and say, what are you doing? The Buddha didn't teach 6 steps walking, and you're breaking the step up into 6 parts. That's not the Buddha's teaching. But you see, this was necessary. This sort of development was necessary. So apart from just, as Palanyani said, the differences of opinion, there is also the cultivation that allows people who are in this third category, that are unable to become enlightened just by hearing the Buddha's teaching, and need the teacher to explain it and to apply it to to give them a technique of seeing this, which you'll see in the commentaries, and you see in many stories about how they apply the Buddha's teaching. And who, you may even, if we had all of the records and all of the history, we might even see that in the Buddha's time, they were developing, they were, had many techniques. Some of the techniques that we have today and we see in the Visuddhimagga might have even been practiced in the Buddha's time. There may have been 6 parts to the walking step in the Buddha's time. Whether there were or not, the evolution of meditation techniques as a entity came about not because people were discontent with the Buddha's teaching, but because people can't understand it, and people can't put it into practice without a regimen and a technique. And so it's, at best, if you're to give it the benefit of the doubt, interpretation at its best is just the extrapolation for the purpose of putting into practice by people, especially who aren't able to, who don't have very strong faculties and thus aren't able to immediately grasp it.
Maybe the meditation techniques that were known before the Buddha started to teach his kind of meditation, and are practiced even today still, like I'm thinking of yoga and their breath meditation, and things like that might still, how to say,
Be useful.
come together and make the picture
Right.
more diffuse.
Allowing to see what sorts of practices they practiced in the Buddha's time, and also why the Buddha taught why breath was so it came so easily. Because why was breath so prominent in the Buddha's teaching? because that's what they were practicing at the time.
Mm.
No?